Let us just go back to a simpler time when Will Ferrell didn't make crappy movies like the two Daddy's Home movies. Why are there two of them? And, of course, Holmes and Watson. So please enjoy a review of one of his few good movies. That's kind of sad, actually, considering how good this movie is. Elf! So Elf is the classic Christmas movie starring Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell, he goes to the big city. Oh no, he's abducted by Santa as a kid. I know it was supposedly an accident, but he did abduct him because he didn't return him. They raised this guy named Buddy the Elf. That's what they name him, at least, because his diapers say Buddy. Why do I know so much? They raise him. Eventually, he's like, I have a dad. I'm going to go meet him. He goes to the city, and then we get our very touching, heartfelt movie. Who hasn't grown up with this movie? What human hasn't? I mean, I guess some, 30, if you're 25, 20, let's just say, if you're in your late 20s or older, you might not have grown up with this movie. If you're younger than that, by God, you lived your entire life for this movie. This is one of the, The Incredibles, for me, The Incredibles, Cars, believe it or not, Despicable Me. Even though I'm not a huge fan of that movie, I mean, I like it, but it was part of my childhood, okay? Those type of movies are so integrated into your childhood. Yeah, Elf is probably the most integrated a movie's ever been into me. I am not joking. It's a tradition for me. It's a legit tradition to watch this movie at midnight on Christmas Eve. Of course, I stay up till about 3 on Christmas Eve. So as you're watching this, I am probably still awake, unless you're watching this not on Christmas. If you're watching this on Christmas Day, I am most likely hanging out with my family because I'm not uploading any videos today. This is what you get for Christmas. But yeah, frick yeah, Elf is an amazing movie. What else is there to say? No one doesn't love... I guess that one guy on Stardust that I do still follow, except for he disagrees with me almost 100% of the time. That's not true. He agrees with me a lot, but I mean, I'm not even remembering the name of it. He's cool. You probably know who he is if you know who recently reviewed Elf and gave it a 3 stars on Stardust. If you actually look at who I follow, it'll take a while to research that. I don't care. If you do know who I'm talking about, make sure to follow him. But Elf is Elf. Okay, so one thing that I've realized about comedies these days, if you ask someone, what do you think of what do you think of Ghostbusters? What do you think of Men in Black? A lot of the time, people that are just recently watched it, they say, wasn't that funny? I don't think it works because it wasn't that funny. And then I just kind of go to them and say, look, there was a simpler time in the early 2000s and somewhat late 2000s and the 90s and 80s, or just earlier comedies. The goal of the comedy wasn't just to make you laugh. It was supposed to be a coherent movie. What have you done, Will Ferrell? Oh my God. Comedy sucks these days. I hate comedies nowadays. They are merely nothing like the greatness comedy. Elf is the perfect example of a comedy that has just so many layers to fall back on. If it fails on one thing, because if you rewatch this movie, the comedy doesn't work the whole time. So what did they do? Oh, it's also had a very interesting and heartfelt story to that. So once that comedy layer gets ripped off, it's still a funny movie, but once that comedy layer gets ripped off, now it can fall back on the great characters and story. But then you look at a comedy like, I'm assuming Holmes and Watson, that movie that literally came out today, a movie like that, where obviously the trailer is showing that the entire goal of the movie is to be a throwback to Step Brothers, and the entire goal of the movie is to make you laugh, and if it fails miserably, because you're not interested, you're bored, and it's not a good movie. One movie that I do think actually had something to fall back on unintentionally was, what was it called? Overboard. Oh my God, I barely remember anything about Overboard. It was a movie that was it was 2 hours, it was supposed to be a comedy, but it was never funny. I never laughed once in that. I cringed every single time it was a joke. And it's not very interesting. But it kind of falls back on its okay story. So that's it's a movie. And it's an example of a movie that I hated watching, but I didn't hate as a whole. But that's a perfect example of a comedy that just fails. Because because a movie I'm assuming Holmes and Watson, and I'm not even saying Holmes and Watson, I care about as much as I care about the Emoji Movie. Yeah, That's bad I do not care about this movie at all. I would care more about a PG-13 Deadpool 2 that I made a video about, got 50 views, even though I didn't review the movie at all. Who knows? I'm recording this days early. I'm just assuming I'm not going to review Once Upon a Deadpool. The performances in the movie are great. Mind blown, they're all great. It's amazing. What is there to say? Elf is a fantastic movie, and it is my favorite comedy. Don't at me, bro. It is my favorite comedy. It's the funniest. It's the most clever. It's the perfect example of how to make a good comedy. If the comedy doesn't work anymore because you've seen it so many times, great, you can fall back on the heartfelt story and make you feel emotions. This is the perfect example of what comedy should be. And yes, my sister does study comedy. This is actually how I know this. I mean, I genuinely, before I talked to her recently, she's like an adult, but before I actually talked to her recently, I learned, I hated comedies nowadays, but then I kind of realized, oh, it's because the stories suck. Like, first get a good story, then then add the comedy over. So yeah, Elf is not going to be a 9 out of 10. In fact, Elf, the Christmas classic, is simply just, why not be a 10 out of 10? This might be one of my favorite films. It's my favorite comedy, and it maybe not the comedy doesn't always work every time. I mean, the comedy still works. Like, it's still a funny movie, but you rip away comedy and you still got story to fall back on. What do you guys think on Elf? This Christmas stuff was pretty freaking fun to do. Not really, because I just recorded, it was basically just me recording one big video and splitting it up into 4 separate movies. So yeah, bye. This was actually fun. Like, I thought this was going to be cringy. This was actually fun. I guess I can talk about some more Break stuff. Break is going to be awesome, guys. This news is probably all going to already be news to you because I already talked about probably my Bumblebee or Aquaman or Mary Poppins review a couple days ago. But this Break's going to be awesome. We're getting an escape room review later in the break. Oh my god, I'm scared. And, okay, I guess this break's not going to be so awesome. But I will review a bunch of M. Night Shyamalan. That's kind of what I'm doing this break. Bye!